Professor Zilrax floated into the classroom, his gelatinous form shimmering with anticipation. Today was going to be interesting to say the least. The blob-like alien cleared his throat, or whatever passed for a throat in his species, and addressed the class of wide-eyed and some wide-tentacled students. Greetings, class. Today we have a special treat, and by treat I mean potential trauma that may haunt your dreams for cycles to come. He paused, allowing a ripple of nervous laughter to sweep through the room. We'll be discussing the most terrifying species in the known galaxy, humans. A collective gasp echoed through the classroom, followed by the sound of several students instinctively activating their defense mechanisms. Zilrax couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of a Florvian student suddenly sprouting spikes, while a Gelpudian melted into a puddle of goo beneath its desk. Now, settle down, Zilrax gurgled, his amorphous body jiggling with amusement. There aren't any actual humans here, yet he winked, or at least performed the closest approximation his species could manage, which looked more like a localized seizure. As the class reluctantly relaxed, Zilrax continued, today's lesson focuses on one of the most baffling aspects of human behavior, their eating habits. Specifically, we'll be discussing what they call Seafood Day. He activated the holographic projector, and an image of Earth's oceans appeared above the classroom. As you know, Earth is a death world, teeming with all manner of vicious creatures. But what you might not realize is that humans don't just survive on this planet, they thrive. And part of that involves eating things that would make even the bravest Zorgax warrior soil their exoskeleton. The image shifted to show a variety of sea creatures, sharks, octopuses, crabs, and other marine life. Several students recoiled in horror, while others leaned in, morbidly fascinated. These, my dear students, are what humans call seafood, and yes, before you ask, they eat all of it. A Traxian student raised a tentacle. Professor, surely you jest. Those creatures look like they could devour a small moon. Zilrax's body rippled with laughter. Oh, my sweet summer larva, if only I were joking. Humans not only eat these creatures, but they also enjoy it. They have entire festivals dedicated to consuming these sea monsters. He pulled up another image, this time showing a human biting into a lobster claw. The class collectively winced. Now I know what you're thinking, Zilrax continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Professor, how can such soft, squishy creatures possibly subdue and consume these armored behemoths? Well, dear students, prepare to have your minds blown, or in some of your cases, expanded, contracted, or possibly liquefied. The hologram changed to show a human kitchen. Humans have developed an array of tools specifically designed for dismantling their aquatic prey. Behold, the dreaded nutcracker. A close-up of a metallic, scissor-like device appeared. Several students whimpered. This diabolical contraption allows humans to break through even the toughest exoskeletons with ease. And that's just the beginning. They have an entire arsenal of utensils dedicated to the art of seafood consumption. Zilrax's gelatinous form quivered with a mix of fear and excitement as he continued his lecture. But wait, there's more. Humans don't just eat these creatures, they've turned it into a social event. Imagine, if you will, gathering with your clutchmates to ceremonially dismember and devour the most terrifying creatures your planet has to offer. That, my friends, is a human seafood boil. The hologram shifted to display a large table covered in newspapers, with piles of red crustaceans steaming in the center. Humans sat around, laughing and talking as they tore into the shells with bare hands. A Volaxian student in the front row fainted, their crystalline body clattering to the floor. Zilrax paused for a moment, watching as two classmates dragged the unconscious Volaxian to the recovery corner. Now, don't get too excited. We haven't even gotten to the best part yet. Zilrax's voice was filled with mock cheerfulness. Let's talk about how they prepared these monstrosities. The image changed to show a live lobster being dropped into a pot of boiling water. The class erupted in a cacophony of shrieks, squawks, and one very distressed moo. Yes, you're seeing this correctly. Humans often cook these creatures alive. They claim it preserves the freshness of the meat, because apparently the only thing better than eating a sea monster is eating a freshly killed sea monster. Zilrax paused, allowing the horror to sink in. He could practically feel the nightmares forming in his students' minds. It was glorious. But wait, he exclaimed, his voice rising to be heard over the din of distressed aliens. Before you all flee the classroom in terror, let me remind you of something important. These humans, the ones who casually dine on creatures that would give most of us heart attacks or equivalent circulatory failures just by looking at them, they want to join the Galactic Federation. The room fell silent, save for the soft whimpering of a Gloopian in the back row. That's right, Zilrax continued, his voice now a mix of awe and trepidation. The species that treats consuming apex predators as a fun weekend activity wants to mingle with the rest of us civilized folk. Imagine inviting a human to a diplomatic dinner. You'd have to child-proof the entire buffet to make sure they don't mistake the Zarxian ambassador for an appetizer. A nervous titter of laughter rippled through the classroom. Zilrax could see his students starting to engage with the absurdity of the situation, their fear slowly being replaced by a morbid fascination. Now, let's delve deeper into the human psyche and try to understand if such a thing is possible, why they engage in this behavior. Is it a show of dominance, a bizarre mating ritual, or simply a case of if it moves, it's food? Zilrax pulled up a new hologram, this time showing a human restaurant specializing in seafood. The walls were adorned with fishing nets, anchors, and what appeared to be the preserved remains of various sea creatures. Humans have entire establishments dedicated to the consumption of these aquatic nightmares. They call them seafood restaurants, although a more accurate name might be houses of aquatic horror or dining rooms of Davy Jones' locker, the latter being a human nautical reference that I'm still trying to wrap my membranes around. He zoomed in on a menu board. Let's take a look at some of the delicacies on offer, shall we? Here we go, squid ink pasta, because apparently, eating the creature itself wasn't enough. They had to go and make a meal out of its bodily fluids too. A Zentarian student in the third row turned an interesting shade of chartreuse and excused themselves hastily. Oh, and here's a crowd favorite, shark fin soup. Yes, you heard that correctly. They make soup out of the appendages of one of the ocean's most feared predators. I suppose when you come from a death world, you have to assert your dominance over the food chain somehow. Zilrax's gelatinous form rippled with what might have been a shudder, but perhaps the most perplexing item on this menu of marine madness is something called Rocky Mountain oysters. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oysters are those bivalve mollusks we saw earlier, and you'd be right. But here's the kicker: Rocky Mountain oysters aren't seafood at all. They're not even from the ocean. He paused for dramatic effect, his body quivering with anticipation. They're bull testicles. The classroom erupted into chaos. Several students made a break for the exit, while others simply shut down, their bodies going into various states of protective stasis. Now, Class Zilrax called out over the pandemonium. Let's not lose our heads or any other body parts over this. Remember, we're here to learn. As the chaos slowly subsided, Zilrax continued, his voice laden with sarcasm. You see, humans don't just limit themselves to terrorizing the oceans. They're equal opportunity predators. If it moves, swims, flies, or even if it just stands around chewing cud, humans will find a way to put it on a plate. He pulled up another image, this time showing a human sushi restaurant. And just when you think it couldn't get any more bizarre, humans go and invent something like this: sushi. The hologram zoomed in on a plate of colorful rolls. For those of you who haven't fainted yet, allow me to explain. Sushi is raw fish. Yes, you heard that right, raw and wrapped in seaweed and rice. Because apparently cooking the sea monsters wasn't challenging enough, they had to go and eat them in their natural, uncooked state. A brave Zelocian student raised an appendage, but Professor, wouldn't consuming raw aquatic life forms pose significant health risks? Zilrax's body jiggled in what might have been a nod. An excellent question. One might think so, but humans have evolved robust digestive systems capable of processing all sorts of potentially hazardous materials. In fact, some humans actively seek out these risky foods, claiming their delicacies. He pulled up an image of fugu, the infamous pufferfish. Take this charming little creature, for example. It contains a neurotoxin 1,200 times more potent than cyanide. One wrong cut in preparation, and it's lights out for the diner. And yet, humans consider this a delicacy. They literally play culinary Russian roulette for fun. The class stared in stunned silence, their various alien physiologies struggling to process this information. But wait, there's more, Zilrax exclaimed, his voice pitched with false enthusiasm. Humans don't just stop at eating dangerous sea creatures. Oh no, that would be far too simple for these Deathworlders. They've turned it into a sport. The hologram shifted to show humans on a boat, wrestling with enormous fish. This, my traumatized students, is what humans call sport fishing. They purposely seek out the largest, most dangerous fish they can find, battle with them for hours, and then either eat them or, and this is the truly baffling part, release them back into the ocean. A praxis student, its eye stalks quivering, spoke up. They let them go. After all that. Zilrax's body rippled in what might have been a shrug. Indeed, sometimes the thrill of the hunt is enough for them. It's as if they're saying to the ocean, we could eat you if we wanted to, but we're feeling merciful today. He changed the hologram again, this time showing a massive whale breaching the ocean's surface. And let's not forget the largest creatures in Earth's oceans, whales. Massive beasts that could swallow most of our species whole without even noticing. Surely humans leave these leviathans alone, right? The class looked hopeful for a moment. Wrong, Zilrax exclaimed, almost gleefully. Humans used to hunt these giants extensively. They'd send out entire ships just to harpoon these behemoths, render them into oil, and use every part of their enormous bodies. A collective groan of disbelief echoed through the classroom. Now, to their credit, Zilrax continued, his tone softening slightly, many human societies have since banned whale hunting. They've realized that maybe, just maybe, driving species to extinction for lamp oil and corset stays isn't the best long-term strategy. He paused, his gelatinous form seeming to gather itself. But here's the truly mind-boggling part, class. Despite all this, the hunting, the eating, the turning of ocean predators into appetizers, humans are now at the forefront of ocean conservation efforts. The hologram changed to show humans cleaning up beaches, rehabilitating injured marine life, and protesting against ocean pollution. Yes, you're seeing this correctly. The same species that treats the ocean like an all-you-can-eat buffet is now leading the charge to protect it. They've created vast marine preserves, implemented fishing quotas, and are working to clean up the very waters they once treated as a combination larder and dumping ground. Zilrax's voice took on a tone of grudging admiration. It's as if they've looked at the ocean and said, "We could conquer you, we could consume everything in you, but we choose not to. Instead, we'll protect you right after we finish this plate of calamari." The class sat in stunned silence, trying to reconcile the images of humans as both predators and protectors. And this, my dear students, is why humans are simultaneously the most terrifying and the most fascinating species in the known galaxy. They can look at a creature like this. He pulled up an image of a great white shark and think both, "I wonder what that tastes like, and we must protect this magnificent creature." Zilrax's gelatinous form seemed to puff up, as if preparing for a grand finale. So what have we learned today? That humans are crazy, undoubtedly. That they have stomachs of steel and the culinary bravery of 1,000 Zorgax warriors, absolutely. But we've also learned that they're complex, contradictory, and capable of change. He looked around the classroom, noting the mix of terror, awe, and confusion on his students' faces or equivalent sensory organs. And that, class, is why the potential admission of Earth into the Galactic Federation is such a hot topic. Can we really allow a species that treats ocean predators like a snack menu to join our civilized society? A tentative appendage was raised in the back, but Professor, a timid voice asked, "Given their ability to survive on a death world and their complex relationship with their environment, couldn't humans potentially be valuable allies?" Zilrax's body rippled in what might have been a smile. An excellent observation. And therein lies the great debate. Are humans too dangerous to allow into the galactic community? Or are they exactly what we need to face the unknown threats lurking in the dark corners of the universe? He let that thought sink in for a moment before continuing. Imagine, if you will, a diplomatic crisis with the notoriously aggressive Zarxian Empire. Would you rather have a mild-mannered Florvian at your side, or a human who looks at the most terrifying creatures in the ocean in the ocean? A nervous titter of laughter rippled through the classroom. But before we get too carried away with visions of humans as our saviors, let's remember one crucial detail, Zilrax cautioned, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. These are the same beings who invented something called a turducken. He pulled up an image of the infamous dish, a chicken stuffed inside a duck, stuffed inside a turkey. The class recoiled in unified horror. Yes, you're seeing this correctly. Not content with eating one bird at a time, humans decided to engage in some sort of poultry nesting doll situation. It's as if they looked at the concept of food and said, "You know what this needs, more food inside it." Zilrax paused, allowing the full impact of human culinary creativity to sink in. And let's not even get started on their competitive eating contests. Imagine, if you will, a species so dominant in their food chain that they turn eating itself into a sport. The mind boggles. He glanced around the room, noting with satisfaction the mix of horror, fascination, and dawning existential dread on. He glanced around the room, noting with satisfaction the mix of horror, fascination, and dawning existential dread on his students' faces. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of human eating habits is their adaptability. These creatures can and will eat almost anything. Zilrax pulled up a series of images showing humans eating various exotic foods from around their planet. Behold, fermented shark from Iceland, live octopus from Korea, fried tarantulas from Cambodia, and let's not forget the infamous durian fruit, which smells so potent that it's banned in many public spaces on Earth. A Gashlovian student in the front row turned an interesting shade of puce and seemed to be fighting the urge to expel its last meal. "Oh, don't lose your lunch just yet," Zilrax chuckled, his gelatinous form rippling with amusement. "We haven't even gotten to their drink selection. Did you know humans intentionally consume liquid that makes them temporarily lose control of their faculties? They call it alcohol, and it's a cornerstone of many of their social interactions." He displayed an image of a human cocktail bar. They mix these mind-altering substances with various flavors, sometimes even adding those sea creatures we discussed earlier. Has anyone heard of an oyster shooter? The class collectively shuddered. But here's the real kicker, Zilrax continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Humans don't just eat these things out of necessity. They actively seek out new and exciting flavors. They have entire professions dedicated to combining ingredients in novel ways. They call these brave souls chefs, but a more accurate term might be flavor alchemists or gastronomic daredevils. He pulled up an image of an avant-garde restaurant kitchen, where chefs were using liquid nitrogen and molecular gastronomy techniques. Look at this. They're not content with traditional cooking methods. No, they have to bring science into the kitchen. They're essentially turning their food into chemistry experiments. And then they eat the results. A Ziglovian student, its multiple eyes wide with a mix of horror and fascination, raised a tentacle. "Professor, are you suggesting that humans view their sustenance as entertainment?" Zilrax's body quivered in what might have been a nod. Precisely. Humans have elevated eating from a mere biological necessity to an art form, a social activity. and sometimes even a challenge. They have competitions to see who can consume the spiciest foods, knowing full well it will cause them intense discomfort. They call it asserting dominance over their food. I call it culinary masochism. He changed the hologram to show a human eating contest. The sight of humans shoving enormous quantities of food into their mouths at high speed caused several students to emit distress signals in various pitches and odor. Now, I know what you're thinking, Zilrax continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Surely, Professor, a species this obsessed with food must be constantly at war over resources, and you'd be right, to a point. The hologram shifted to show scenes of human agriculture and food distribution. Humans have developed incredible technologies to produce and distribute food on a massive scale. They can make deserts bloom and grow food in vertical farms in their densely packed cities. But here's the truly baffling part. They produce more than enough food to feed their entire species, and yet, he paused for dramatic effect. Millions of humans still go hungry every day. A collective gasp echoed through the classroom. Yes, you heard that correctly. The species that can turn ocean predators into gourmet meals and deserts into farmlands somehow hasn't figured out how to efficiently distribute their food. It's as if they're playing some bizarre game of culinary keep-away with themselves. Zilrax's gelatinous form seemed to deflate slightly, as if the weight of human contradictions was physically affecting him. And yet, despite this glaring inefficiency, humans continue to push the boundaries of what's possible with food. They're developing lab-grown meats, 3D-printed foods, and even exploring ways to make long-term space travel sustainable through advanced hydroponics and closed-loop systems. He pulled up an image of a futuristic space farm. Imagine that? Right. The species that thinks nothing of dropping live lobsters into boiling water is also at the forefront of developing technologies that could allow us to sustain life on distant planets and space stations. It's enough to make one's cognitive function short-circuit, isn't it? The class nodded in bewildered agreement. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of human eating habits is how central they are to human culture and social interactions. Zilrax continued. Humans don't just eat to survive. They eat to celebrate, to mourn, to show love, to conduct business, to mark the passage of time. They have special foods for specific holidays, comfort foods for when they're feeling down, and aphrodisiac foods believed to enhance romantic encounters. He displayed a montage of human dining scenes, a family gathered around a Thanksgiving turkey, a couple sharing a romantic spaghetti dinner, a group of business people discussing deals over lunch. In many ways, food is the glue that holds human society together. It's a universal language that transcends borders and cultural differences. Humans may fight wars over territory or resources, but put them in a room with a good meal, and suddenly they're finding common ground. Zilrax paused, his gelatinous form seeming to pulsate with excitement. And this, class, is why understanding human eating habits is crucial as we consider their potential entry into the Galactic Federation. Their relationship with food isn't just about sustenance, it's a window into their psychology, their adaptability, their creativity, and their capacity for both destruction and nurture. He looked around the room, noting with satisfaction that his students were now leaning forward, their various sensory organs fixed on him with rapt attention. Consider this, a species that can look at the most terrifying creatures in their world and think delicious is not a species to be underestimated. They've conquered their food chain so thoroughly that they've turned it into entertainment. They're equally capable of depleting entire species for food and developing technologies to feed billions sustainably. Zilrax's voice took on a tone of grudging admiration. In short, humans are walking, talking contradictions. They're capable of incredible cruelty and remarkable compassion, often in the same meal. They'll overfish their oceans, then pioneer conservation efforts to protect marine life. They'll create dishes that could kill them, then develop medical techniques to save themselves from their own culinary adventures. He let that sink in for a moment before continuing. So the question isn't just whether we should allow humans into the Galactic Federation, it's whether we can afford not to. In a universe full of unknown threats, couldn't we use a species crazy enough to look at a creature like this? He pulled up an image of a giant squid and I bet that would taste great with garlic butter. The class erupted into nervous laughter, punctuated by a few alarmed squeaks and one very confused moo. Now, I'm not saying it would be easy, Zilrax cautioned. Integrating humans into galactic society would undoubtedly present challenges. Imagine trying to organize an interspecies diplomatic dinner when one of the attendees might mistake the Zarxian ambassador for the main course. More laughter, slightly less nervous this time. But consider the possibilities. Need someone to explore a deadly, acid-raining planet? Humans will not only do it, they'll probably try to figure out if the acid rain is edible, facing an invasion from a warlike species. Humans might just invite them to a barbecue and somehow turn them into allies, or at least into the next exotic dish on their menu. Zilrax's gelatinous form seemed to expand, as if swelling with the implications of his own words. In conclusion, class, human eating habits are a microcosm of their species as a whole. They're bizarre, often terrifying, occasionally inspiring, and never ever boring. As we move forward in our galactic community, we must ask ourselves, Are we prepared for the chaos, creativity, and culinary adventures that come with embracing humanity? He paused, surveying the mix of terror and excitement on his students' faces, because make no mistake, if we invite humans to the galactic table, they won't just sit quietly and nibble on scene of vegetables. They'll revolutionize our cuisine, challenge our perceptions, and probably try to deep fry anything that stays still long enough. A triloxid student, its crystalline structure vibrating with a mix of fear and excitement, spoke up. Professor, given everything you've told us, do you think humans are ready for the Galactic Federation? Zilrax's body rippled in what might have been a laugh. Oh, my dear student, that's not the question we should be asking. The real question is the Galactic Federation ready for humans? The classroom fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. And on that appetizing note, Zilrax concluded, his voice laden with irony, class is dismissed. For your next assignment, I want you all to research human food idioms. I expect a full report on phrases like piece of cake, spill the beans, and my personal favorite, bringing home the bacon, and may the cosmic forces have mercy on your digestive systems. As the students filed out, a cacophony of bewildered chatter filling the air, Zilrax couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. The galaxy was about to get a lot more interesting, and possibly a lot more delicious. He glanced at his schedule for the next class, human mating rituals, and the concept of dating Zilrax's gelatinous form shuddered slightly. Some topics, it seemed, were too bizarre even for him, but that was a lesson for another day. For now he had a sudden, inexplicable craving for sushi. As the last of his students vacated the classroom, their various appendages and sensory organs still twitching from the day's revelations, Professor Zilrax found himself alone with his thoughts. And what chaotic, bewildering thoughts they were. He oozed over to the window, gazing out at the bustling alien metropolis beyond. Hovercars zipped between towering spires of crystalline architecture, while beings of all shapes and sizes went about their daily routines. It was a picture of galactic harmony, a delicate balance maintained through millennia of cooperation and mutual understanding. And humans were about to cannonball right into the middle of it. Zilrax's gelatinous form rippled with a mixture of anticipation and dread. He could almost hear the collective gasp of the galaxy as humans made their grand entrance. "Hello, universe," they'd probably say, waving a fork in one hand and a mysterious, possibly lethal delicacy in the other. "Who's hungry?" And the professor chuckled to himself, the sound resembling something between a gurgle and a hiccup. He had to admit, part of him was excited. Humans, for all their terrifying aspects, were nothing if not entertaining. They'd certainly liven up those dreadfully dull Galactic Federation meetings. He could just imagine it now. The Zorblexian ambassador droning on about trade regulations, when suddenly a human delegate stands up. "That's all well and good," they'd say, "but has anyone ever tried deep frying a Zorblexian tentacle? I bet it'd be delicious with some tartar sauce." Cue galactic panic. Zilrax's body jiggled with silent laughter. Oh yes, humans were going to turn the galactic community on its head, and maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing. After all, the galaxy had been in a bit of a rut lately. Same old trade disputes, same old territorial squabbles, same old debates about the ethical implications of faster-than-light travel on subspace creatures that may or may not exist. Humans, with their bizarre eating habits and even stranger customs, might be exactly the shake-up the Galactic Federation needed. Sure, they'd probably cause a few interstellar incidents along the way. Zilrax made a mental note to warn the Gruznoids not to mention their ceremonial head tentacles around humans unless they wanted them to end up in a stir-fry. But they'd also bring a fresh perspective. A species that could turn the most terrifying predators of their world into cuisine, that could adapt to eat almost anything, anywhere, that had elevated the simple act of sustenance into an art form, a social activity, and sometimes even a competitive sport. Yes, humans were crazy. But it was the kind of crazy that explored new worlds, that pushed boundaries, that looked at the impossible and said, "I wonder what that tastes like with hot sauce." Zilrax turned away from the window, his gelatinous form undulating with purpose as he moved back to his desk. He had a report to write for the Galactic Federation Council, and he knew exactly what he was going to say. In conclusion, he began, his appendages flying over the holographic keyboard. While humans present numerous challenges to galactic integration, their unique perspective and adaptability make them invaluable potential allies. Their culinary practices, while often alarming, demonstrate a remarkable ability to overcome obstacles and thrive in hostile environments. It is the opinion of this humble xenoanthropologist that the benefits of human inclusion in the Galactic Federation far outweigh the risks. He paused, considering his next words carefully. However, it is strongly recommended that all diplomatic functions involving humans be preceded by a thorough briefing on which attendees are, in fact, sentient beings and not potential appetizers. Additionally, the installation of emergency protein resequencers in all government buildings should be considered a priority, to discourage any impromptu human cooking experiments with local flora and fauna. Zilrax finished his report with a flourish, feeling quite pleased with himself. Let the council chew on that for a while. He had a feeling the galaxy was in for quite a ride. As he prepared to send off his report, A sudden thought struck him. He quickly added a postscript. P.S. In the event of human integration, it is strongly advised that we immediately begin research into transgalactic food delivery systems. Something tells me Cosmos eats meals from every corner of the galaxy could be the next big thing. And if we don't do it, the humans certainly will. With a satisfied gurgle, Zilrax sent off his report. He then turned his attention to preparing for tomorrow's class, human sports, when friendly competition means potential bodily harm. As he gathered his materials, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. The galaxy was about to get a lot more interesting, and potentially a lot more accident-prone. But then again, as the humans would say, you can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. Zilrax paused, his gelatinous form freezing mid-undulation. Computer, he said, make a note. Research Earth dish called omelette possibly relevant for next class on human idioms and their relation to food. The computer beeped in acknowledgement, and Zilrax resumed his preparations. Yes, the humans were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what they all needed. After all, life was like a box of chocolates, or so he'd heard. He'd have to remember to ask about that one too.